No, it's not a rerun from Tarzan. This is the Papa System Great Outdoor Net. That's exactly what it is. This is W6CJX. I'll be your net control operator for tonight's Papa Great Outdoor Net. This net meets every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific. This is a directed net, so please go through net control at all times, and your cooperation is always greatly appreciated. Before we get started, let's pause for an emergency or priority traffic. All right, hearing nothing, including crickets. We'll continue with the net. Stations with emergency or priority traffic can come to the net at any time with a double break, and net control will respond appropriately. The Papa System is an open membership-supported system in the Southern California area with coverage from the Mexican border to Paso Robles and from the Channel Islands to Las Vegas, Nevada. If you're a visitor to the Papa System tonight, I invite you to go to papasys.com and register as a guest. Guest registration, you'll have 45 days of free access to the Papa System. And at the end of your guest access period, we'd love for you to become a subscribed member and continue to use and be a part of the Papa System family. However, all amateurs are welcome to participate in the daily, weekly, and monthly Papa System nets, regardless of the membership status. Again, this is the Papa System Great Outdoor Net. Good evening, everybody. I know that the intro there is what I call bumper music. It's not really music, at least I hope not anyway. I've been saving that one for a very long time, and I had no reason to ever use it, but I think tonight I did. So that's why I figured I'd go for it. Just have it. We got all kinds of stuff happening in that thing. So, well, let's get started with the announcements. We got a great net ahead of us tonight. We got a very special guest that we've been working and collaborating, and we've been having some fun with it. So I think we'll have a good time tonight. Looking so forward to it. It can't help but be a good time. So I hope everyone had a great 4th and 4th of July weekend. It's kind of a reversed holiday where you have Friday as the holiday instead of Monday. Anyway. All right. With that, let's go with the announcements for this week coming up.
Here are the Papa System weekly announcements for the week of July 7th. The Papa Inland Empire Breakfast. Papa will be meeting in person on Saturday, July 12th at 9 a.m. at the Mill Creek Cattle Company. Everyone is welcome. We will be offering ham license testing at 8 a.m. for technician, general, and amateur extra class licenses. Please RSVP for attendance and for ham license testing at 8 a.m. The Papa West Side Luncheon. Papa will also be meeting in person on Saturday, July 12th at 11 a.m. at the Sizzler Culver City. We will be offering ham license testing at 10 a.m. for technician, general, and amateur extra class licenses. Please RSVP for attendance and for ham license testing at 10 a.m. Papa Quick Start Program. In conjunction with our test sessions, we have a Quick Start program for newly licensed technicians. Our Quick Start program is designed to get you on the air as soon as your new FCC license arrives and help you understand how to use a radio on the Papa System to communicate with fellow hams. The Papa System will provide you with a pre-programmed UHF handheld radio at no cost to you and assist you with technical and operational issues as you learn more about ham radio. More details are available at the test session and on the Papa website. The USS Midway Museum radio team, NI6IW, will be on the air on Saturday, July 12th, from 0900 to 1600 Pacific Standard Time, highlighting Independence Day. Check the Papa website for modes and frequencies. All this information and a whole lot more can be found on the Papa website at papasys.com.
Yes, indeed. That's a great program, the Quick Start program. If you're planning on getting your technician license, do it with us at one of our great breakfasts or luncheons, and you can get yourself a brand new radio, all programmed, ready to go, and hope that you maybe come on and be a Papa member and join us. We do have some really great nets out here each night, pretty much, so technical and just about anything you'd ever want. But tonight, I'm not going to get too technical, at least radio-wise. We might a little bit. I should take that back. Okay, W6CJX for the Papa System Great Outdoor Net. I met this gentleman on the air. I might have heard him before I talked to him in the Amazon jungle. I couldn't swear that I did. And I almost forgot that I did talk to him in the Amazon jungle. So at least I have bragging rights. And I think there was one or two other people. So I'd like to introduce Sam, W6SJM, and he is a wildlife photographer and his wife, of course, and a ham radar operator now. He's been a wildlife photographer for many years. But he'll fill you in with that. Sam and his wife just recently returned from the Amazon on one of their latest expeditions in a quest for some of the best wildlife photography that I have ever seen. Now, you can go to his QRZ page, and his call sign is Whiskey 6, Sierra Juliet Mike, and you can go to QRZ and see a teaser of his pages. But we'll get to some more of that later. You do have to check out the rest of his photography. It is insane. I know I'm building him up. He's probably running out the door right now. His photographs, they look, to me, my first impression was that they were done in a studio, which is pretty much impossible if you're in the Amazonian jungles. But in essence, I guess it was an outdoor studio. So it takes a lot of, probably a lot of photos to get to those with the lighting and things like that. He did it really. So in addition to the array of photographic equipment that they bring with them, was his newfound hobby of amateur radio. And so he's very excited about new expeditions. And once he got his general license, once he got back, I believe, after his trip this year, and in the possibility of doing some, I think there's like 51 photo sites that are down in that area, different parks down in the Amazon, Patagonia. I think they're going to Patagonia next, but in the South America region. And so on his latest trip, he was able to get back into the Papa system from the deep of the Amazon jungle. And of course, like I said, I was fortunate to have a CUSO with him and asked if he would be interested in joining us on the Great Outdoor Net. So here we are. So without further ado, let me introduce Sam, W6SJM. Good evening, Sam, and welcome to the Great Outdoors.
Thank you, Bob. This is Whiskey 6, Sierra Juliet Mike. This is Sam, and I'm transmitting right now from San Diego, which is my QTH. Let me give you a little bit of background on me. I've been a outdoor enthusiast pretty much my entire life. But for the last probably 30, 40 years in my adult life, I've been traveling quite a bit into the areas of Central America, and then further down south into South America. That seems to be my area of choice to travel. Not that there's any other fantastic places to go, but this is, for whatever reason, been one that's been in my eye for a long time. My background is as a biologist, actually. I was studied formally as a biologist, and then I've worked in biotech, medtech my entire career. But spending a lot of time in the jungles has been a passion. And in the past 35 years or so, that included wildlife photography and bird photography specifically. And this has taken me and my wife now for the last 10 years. Together we've explored many different countries in South America, but we've gone back to the Amazon basin of Peru on multiple occasions, including this last time that Bob was mentioning. And in that time that I've been doing this, over the last few years, I've gotten interested quite a bit in radio. At first, I was just a lurker and doing a lot of receive work, and then I decided to get my technician license at the end of last year, and I actually got it, at the beginning of this year, and studied for my general as I was on my travels down into the Amazon. This last time I took like Bob said, I took my general the day I got back, the day after I got back, and I got my general license after that. So I'm looking forward to doing a lot of travel, including doing some POTA down in South America, where we're headed to Patagonia next year. I spend a lot of time in that area, and I've always been interested in wildlife, and mostly is an excuse to get close to it, having the camera with me, and gives me the time and the patience to be able to get close to some of these remote areas, and also to get some of these photographs. Let me take it back to Bob momentarily. Net control.
Well, Sam, you know, you people can tell you're so well spoken, and I noticed that from the first QSO we had, and you came in amazingly. But we'll talk about that in a minute, of how you got back into the system from basically a hut in the outskirts of I can't even picture all that, but it just is so interesting to all of us because we've added ham radio. So let me just ask you a quick question. Where did you first get your ideas of wanting to be a ham radio operator? Maybe we can kind of start there, and then maybe you can add in that part of how you made that happen. I think that's pretty miraculous. So if you're ready, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. This is Whiskey 6, Sierra Juliet Mike. Yeah, you know, I think more than anything, I've always been interested in things that are difficult. And you know, doing wildlife photography is a difficult thing, and it's a challenge. Doing astrophotography can be a challenge, especially doing it from San Diego in the urban areas. And I saw always that things like radio were kind of like this unobtainium that was out there at all times. And it also required some knowledge of the physics and electronics that I really did not have. And in starting to lurk around receiving a lot, using SDRs and that stuff, it really piqued my interest to understand whether I could drum up the courage to actually start transmitting as well. And so that started me on the journey. I think it was shortly after quarantine that I started listening in and receiving a lot using some of these different receivers, and like the SDR play and things like that. But I really wanted to get into it, and it was mostly because I considered it to be hard, and I still consider it to be hard. The more I start learning about this, the more I realize that I know very little, and it seems like it's going to be one of those hobbies that are just going to, you know, flourish. And that's the same way I feel about pretty much wildlife photography, as well as astrophotography and some of the other things that I do as a passion. And that's really the main reason I felt that it was hard, but at the same time, hard things seem to be very rewarding. Back to you.
Well, hard things come with great rewards. Like you said, you know, you don't always get everything served on a silver platter to you, although we do, in some media forms, call gifts. At least I do sometimes when I'm doing editing or something like that. It's like, wow, that just came out so perfect. I would imagine with photography, it's even more realistic when you just say, oh, okay, I'm going to take this picture. It may not come out, and it does. And it comes out probably better than one that you work even harder on. So those I call gifts. And now another thing you kind of let a little kitty out of the bag was your astrophotography. Now, when I was looking at those pictures and thinking to myself, I've done a little astrophotography, nothing on that level, and we had a great conversation about that the other day. It's just, wow. These are like textbook photos of astrophotography. So I know we have a lot of photographers out here on the Outdoor Net, or in the PAPA system in general, I should say, and I probably would love to ask you some questions on that too. So when did you said you've been into wildlife photography for, well, you said most of your adult life, but what was your interest in saying, okay, I don't want to just take pictures of squirrels at the park anymore, I'm kind of tired of that, or car shows? What made you take that big step to actually travel down to the Amazon and these remote locations. I'll kind of cover both of those in one, like what made you want to go to these great locations and take pictures. Back to you, Sam, W6CJX.
I think I started out as mostly, this is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike for good manners. I started out as a bird watcher back in my hometown in Mexicali in Imperial Valley, right south of Mexico, of the border of the capital of Baja California. That was my hometown. I grew up there, and being in the desert there and being from an urban environment in the desert where people don't necessarily have a lot of closeness to the natural part of the desert. I mean, that closeness is really translated to the Baja experience, meaning like the Baja races. And so it's a very different type of experience that way. And so I always found that certain wildlife would come to my backyard. And I always saw it through like a telescope, seeing it upside down, and because these were, astro-type telescopes, real cheap ones. And it really piqued my interest about those really interesting, beautiful things that were there. And it really was an experience that I had as a kid in San Francisco, not necessarily about going and to the Amazon or places like that, but it was about seeing something in pictures that in real life may not necessarily look the same, but the interpretation of the photographer makes it look different and perhaps pleasing to somebody else. I was traveling when I was a young kid, probably about 12 years old, with my brother's girlfriend up in San Francisco, and she took me to all the classic sites. She took me to Coy Tower, Lombard Street, Golden Gate Bridge, and as I was there, I noticed that she was taking photographs. It was probably an old Nikon 35 millimeter camera, so this is early 70s, right? I'm sorry, late 70s. And I remember, well, that's really cool, she's taking photographs. And several months later, by mail, by snail mail, of course, I received a copy of these photographs. And I was floored because these were just beautiful kind of archetype photographs of those different locations with the fog and beautiful compositions. And I remember thinking to myself that I was there at the same time she was, and I didn't see the same thing she was seeing. And so that piqued my interest of the fact that, perhaps it's in the eye of the photographer more than the subject itself. The subject obviously helps quite a bit, but it's really about the eye of the photographer that really allows you to kind of enliven those things up. So it really piqued my interest in wanting to go to some of these places that I'd seen in National Geographic. I always wanted to go, and it was one of those things that, I was a Jacques Cousteau fan. I was Nick Nichols and all these other fantastic photographers of back in the day in National Geographic that I always thought, wow, I now understand that you can maybe I can go to these places, but maybe I can just experience them first. So in thinking like that, I took my very first experience in going into Central America was actually to go scuba diving. And I realized that I could go. This is a place you could go to. And it was off the coast of Belize, and we were diving to the Blue Hole. And I remember thinking, of course I didn't have any camera gear. I was not in any shape or form able to afford to get any sort of like underwater gear, or even know how to use it for that matter. But it was mostly being able to be in these locations and get to them. It was not impossible. That really kind of piqued my interest to kind of keep going back to those places. And that actually, together with bringing the camera along, I always equate the photographing wildlife as hunting with a bow and arrow. It's kind of the same idea. You have to be close enough, you have to have the patience, and you have to be pretty close. It's not like with a long rifle. You have to be pretty darn close, no matter how big your lens is. So you have to put a lot of time into it. And when you put a lot of time into things in the jungles and in the nature, things will happen. Maybe not what you're looking for, but things will definitely happen. And that's what really piqued my interest. It's kind of it really is a bit of a, I would say, addictive thing where if something happens, you go, ooh, if I go back again and spend more time, maybe more things will happen, more opportunities. And so that's kind of what piqued my interest in doing that. Back to you, Bob.
Well, I think you're going to have, hopefully, a few good questions from the net tonight, from the net pool of especially some of our photographers that are out there. You hit on, scuba diving. That's always been one of our favorites there on the outdoors. And then, of course, the photography. It's just one of those beautiful things. And when you mentioned patience and equating it to hunting in a sense, only you're going to shoot something, but you're not going to kill it. You're going to preserve it. Isn't that an interesting thought? So it really is amazing to hear your perspective on what you've done down there. And I would imagine envy of a lot of people, whether they could do it or not. I know I wouldn't be able to go there, so don't plan on me hitching a ride. And not that I wouldn't want to. Believe me, it's beautiful. My biggest adventure is the Papa Ham Camp over to Santa Cruz Island. Like I said, we'd love for you to come over on that too. There's endless photographic opportunities, that's for sure, even just for a day. You're welcome to stay the whole time. The other thing I wanted to ask is, what are your goals? Well, before we do that, let me ask you a little bit about, maybe explain about how you got into the system or back into the system from down there, because I had to take a double take. I just happened to have the radio on, heard you talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was, and you guys were talking, and I said, did he say he was in the Amazon? So maybe just touch on that for a minute, and then we'll head on down the road, or down the river. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. This is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike. Well, when I was starting to get into, as a technician, the easiest thing to do, of course, was do UHF and VHF. I still couldn't figure out, my limitations on 10 meters and all these other things. I felt that maybe my next step had to be general, so I'd feel, open up the bandwidth and the bands themselves, right? And so being the fact that I was using UHF and VHF, and of course I'm using my Yaesu in my car right now to take part on the net, I was thinking that I could take a small radio with me when I travel. When I saw the M1KE by Shark RF, I said, oh, that really piqued my interest, because I already built several hotspots, and I have a few of those, one in my car, one in the house, and one in my office. And so I figured, wow, a hotspot that has a microphone and a speaker on it, and basically all digital all the time. So I said, that is a great device to take with me when I'm traveling. I didn't think I was going to be able to use it on this type of travel, but I said, I heard rumors that Starlink systems were already ubiquitous in many different parts of the Amazon, meaning that obviously the satellites were available, but people are getting creative with using solar arrays as well as batteries to power the Starlink systems. And after about getting into Cusco, traveling down from the cloud forest over the Andes, spending a week up in the Andes, and then a week on the slopes of the eastern slope of the Andes, going down towards the Madre de Dios River of the Manu Wildlife Reserve, or Biosphere Reserve of Peru. Then we were on the river for 2 days before getting to the Manu River, which took us up another day and a half or so to get through the furthest reaches that they allow you to do, unless you're a researcher. The Peruvian government doesn't let you go very far. We're going around the area where the uncontacted tribes are still being reported, and we go to the very end, and we stay with the Machiguenga tribe, and lo and behold, I had been there, last time I was there was about 9 years ago, and lo and behold, they have a Starlink system with a battery backup and a solar panel to charge it up, and got on the DMR bridge using my Shark RF M1KE, and that's how I did all of my QSOs from there, back to the Papa system over the DMR bridge, and also into Kansas City wide over YSF. So yeah, that was, I was pretty amazing. Kind of a double-edged sword in some ways for me, being way out there in the middle of nowhere, and but at the same time was fantastic to be able to get back, and it was quite fun. Back to you, Bob.
Well, I know you definitely impressed the PAPA system and also Cecil, WD6FZA. He wants to possibly have you give a little present, which would be, I'll even drive to wherever you're going to do this presentation because I want to meet you. I feel Darren already got to meet you at the San Diego luncheon. So I'm like, wait a minute, I want to meet Sam. You got to meet him first. That's not fair. Anyway, but he just said all good things about you. And we were already started this process with getting you on the net. So we worked it out, and it's just wonderful to hear all these great things. So going forward, you kind of talked about it. Is there anything you want to add to as far as the radio photography goals and things that you might want to do on this next trip to the Patagonia? Back to you, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. This is Whiskey 6, Sierra Juliet Mike. Yes, we weren't even done with the trip. We were on our way back from Puerto Maldonado, which is the closest town where there's an airport to get back to Lima. And with our friend that we travel with, he lives in Cusco, and his girlfriend, who's from Holland, lives there too with him. And the four of us are traveling, and his name is Steve Sanchez, and he's one of the best bird photographers in South America and heavily involved with the birding community and the bird festivals of South America. People are aware of that for the birders in the audience. But he's a good close friend of mine and my wife's, and we were already planning that, what are we going to do? And the subject has always been there, and to go to Patagonia. And so we are headed to Patagonia next year, our springtime, their fall, because we're hopeful to take photographs of penguins, and also the main goal is to get pumas and down in Patagonia. But in getting my general, I'm hopeful that by then I will be able to do some activations using a little I wouldn't call it QRP because it does 20 watts, but I have this real tiny little device made by a Chinese engineer, and it's called the it's called, now I just drew a blank, I think it's called a but it's a CRF or SFR-X4. I'll remember what it's called, and I'll put it on my page. But it's a little 20-watt device that's about the size of the size of a pack of cigarettes. And with that and a good antenna, I'm hopeful to be able to do some QSOs from Patagonia next year and maybe activate from down there. And either, at the very least, FT8, hopefully some phone. And if I'm really good, I've been starting to practice my CW. So I'm hopeful to get at least somewhat proficient on CW by next year. So those are my plans, both photographic and the radio put together. So I have a feeling that radio is going to be with me on all my trips into the various places that we go. It's going to be with me for sure.
Well, you're going to have to get your wife involved with amateur radio at some point. Even if she's screaming, kicking, you have to tie her up and make her study. Of course, I guess you could maybe use like a simplex down there. Maybe you guys already do that. I don't know. That's something kind of interesting too. But well, I know all those modes are going to be great. But as long as you at least call for me on the PAPA system analog, I'll be able to come back and answer. So yeah, it sounds like it's a match made in heaven as far as amateur radio and photography, putting it together. And of course, those both melt in the pot nicely with the outdoor net here. So, okay, thanks, Sam. I think what I'll do. We've made a half an hour. We keep on our little schedule here. There's no schedule. We don't need no stinking schedule. Let's see if there's anyone out there who'd like to ask a question of Sam. I have a few myself still, but if you have any questions he would love to answer them. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll just make it up. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's take a few check-ins. So stand by, Sam. Go take a drink. Go make a pit stop, whatever you got to do. Let's see if we have anyone out there that would have some questions. Calling all photographers, all wannabe photographers, all adventurers. I would love to ask Sam a couple of questions. Now, don't forget, he does do astrophotography, and it is amazing. Simply amazing. So, with that, let's take a standby and see who we have out there tonight for questions only at this time, and we'll open up the net later for anyone that just wants to check in. So, W6EJX for the Papa System Great Outdoor Net. We're talking to Sam, W6SJM, adventurer extraordinaire and photographer, and a few others. Please come now.
Kilo Juliet 6 Golf Echo Uniform Bob Papa 1.
Kilo Oscar 6 Juliet Charlie Alpha Jeff Papa 3.
Okay, I got 3. KK6LMC. We got Jeff, JCA. And I got one station, well, literally one station that said 1. So if you're the other person that checked in and you have a 1 somewhere in your call, come back.
Hey, Bob, that was me, KJ6GEU on Papa 1.
And 6UTD, always also wanting to get in.
Okay, I picked up Bill, and I got Bob on there too. Yeah, I just heard the 1, but yeah, it's because, doubling and things like that. So we don't want to overwhelm Sam, but we'll get him started. Give him a little taste of something here. KK6LMC, go ahead with your question. Go ahead, Sam, and you can answer it, and then give it back to me. W6EJX.
Hi, Sam. Carolyn here, KK6LMC, and I'd love to know if you were able to see any big cats down in the jungles there. I did see your beautiful picture. I think it was a jaguar that has all the greenery around it on your photos. And I'd love to know if there were any other big cats, because I love them so much. Go ahead, Sam.
Carolyn, thank you. Thank you for the question. This is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike. On this trip, we didn't. Cats are actually not as common to come across. I mean, I look for them at all times. In fact, the first time I ever saw an ocelot was literally on the same river 9 years ago. That was the first time I actually saw an ocelot in the wild. And I photographed ocelot in the Pantanal of Brazil, and I do have some on my Facebook page, but I just don't have them on the QRZ. And those are mostly nocturnal. And by big cat, of course, it's maybe, maybe about the size of a bobcat in this case. But however, jaguar, I've been close to them, and I've known that they've been close to me, but I had never seen one before. In fact, in the same location where we were this time, where I was using the Starlink system 9 years before that, in front of the platform where I was sleeping, the next morning there was a scat from a jaguar that went through there right at the steps of where I was sleeping, and so I was told that was a jaguar, and I believed it based on the size and everything else. But it wasn't until we went to the Pantanal of Brazil, which is about 3 years ago, I think it was, maybe 4 years ago now, I can't remember, that we purposely went to go look for a jaguar. And in that case, I had the opportunity, as you saw in that one picture, it was a very large male that was patrolling the territory, but then I had the also pleasure of photographing a few other examples. But again, it's the nature of being outdoors and everything else is that the lighting and the conditions and the angles and all that stuff, with an animal like that, you don't have a lot of control over, so you have to put a lot of time into it so you can get the good opportunities. And I did get some opportunities with a mother and 2 cubs that were being rambunctious and got a licking because of it, or their mom, and those photographs are on my Facebook page, not on the QRZ. Other than that, I've never seen a mountain lion in the wild. I've seen plenty of bobcat, and I photographed Iberian lynx, which there's only about 1,300 of those left in Spain and Portugal, and I got the pleasure of photographing them last year. At the same time that I put up one of those photographs that I had of the griffon vulture up in the Pyrenees. We were photographing Iberian lynx, and that was probably one of my highlights. I mean, I love photographing the jaguar, but between the Iberian lynx and ocelot, to me, those were my personal highlights for sure. Thank you for the question, Carolyn. Back to you, Bob.
My lovely wife loves cats, so I'm sure we'll probably have a jaguar here at any time, or a mountain lion. You know, I've saw in some reels lately the people around here in our mountain areas. I think one was in Simi, and I forget where the other one was, where they were literally coming up a trail, and here's a mountain lion just cruising along. And, you know, they did kind of the I'm bigger than life thing, put their hands up. I think it scared the heck out of the cat. He just took off. He or she took off. So it's a little scary because it looked like it was kind of stalking this guy, but then it just went ahead and went about its business. Great. Okay, well, thank you, Carolyn, for the question on that. And we'll give a little, there we go, a little bit of cat noise. There we go. Okay. Gotta use these resources once in a while. Bob, KJ6GEU. Good evening, Bob, and welcome to the Great Outdoors.
Good evening, Bob, and good evening, Sam, and everybody on the net. It's Bob, KJ6GEU. Photography is one of my passions as well. I heard you mention scuba diving. I do scuba dive. I do shoot pictures underwater. I've had real good luck with a small compact camera, Sony RX100 version 6 in an Icolite housing with video lights and a strobe. I've gotten some really good results with that. I need to put some of those up on my QRZ page. I haven't gotten around to doing that. I've got some others out there. I do love astrophotography as well. I do the Milky Ways and the star trails. I've got a star tracker and all that. But the deep sky stuff like you've got on your Facebook page, which is just amazing, is a little bit beyond me because I just don't have that astrophotography camera and the telescope that's set up for it. Maybe one of these days, but right now all I've got is a Celestron scope that's not real good for deep sky stuff. My question for you, though, is those birds. The bird shots you have are just amazing, and I've always wondered how you get set up for that. I mean, obviously, I guess you must wait for them in the spot that you know they're going to show up at eventually, and then when you see something, just hit the burst mode, right? I'm completely ignorant as to how to do that well, and I'd like to learn. Back to you, KJ6GEU.
Well, thank you for the question. This is Sam, Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike. You know, there's a couple of things you touched on there. I don't dive anymore. I don't scuba dive. I haven't done that in several years. I would love to, but the time commitment is one that I really love diving here in San Diego. I love kelp diving. And it's just not in the cards for me right now. But if I did go back, obviously I would want to start doing underwater photography as well. Now, that being said, my favorite camera to take with me when I'm city traveling and I want to take something with me, by far, is the Sony, the Mark 7 of the same camera that you have. I think that is, I have several little compact cameras, but that little Sony is one that I take with me, and if you see any black and white shots taken of cities and city scenes and in Spain, or mostly city scenes and stuff like that, it's with that camera. I love that little camera. It's just whatever reason it works for me too, so I get it. I understand about that camera. Now, as far as the other question, you know, it's a couple of things. I think it's like surfers make the best surf photographers, you know, sort of thing, right? So it's a knowing your subject is one that you that helps quite a bit. And so from my perspective, being that I have a background of being kind of a lurker and bird watcher and kind of being out in nature a lot, especially with birds, with certain types of birds, even though there may be a different variety of a type of flycatcher, they're still flycatchers. or a different variety of a kingfisher, they're still kingfishers, and so on and so forth with different birds. Of course, there's some that we don't have up here, but they have only in the tropical areas. But basically, you sit there and you kind of study them, and you spend some time with them, not too much, but you realize that they're creatures of habit. You know which ones are approachable, which ones are not. But what you do is, like anything else, like you can imagine, you don't get a lot of time with them. You can imagine these things happen within probably 4 seconds, right? And so everything is about muscle memory. First of all, the actual technique and making sure you have the right exposure. If you're using a little bit of fill flash that I like to use on occasion if the animal allows it, just to get a little glint in their eye, a little detail in the feather and the fur, stuff like that, that kind of helps a little bit. Never as a primary source of light unless it's nighttime photography. But it's really about understanding the behavior a little bit more, kind of seeing the predictability if they're ones that come back to perch like flycatchers do, and then basically making micro adjustments to both the exposure and particularly the pose, meaning your pose. You might have to move half a foot one way or half a foot the other to clear the branches to make sure you have a nice deep background, because otherwise the background in the jungle obviously is going to be very noisy, right, very busy. So what you're trying to do is get as long of a background so you can blur it out if you have the optics to do so. So a lot of those things have to do with muscle memory and not thinking about the technical aspect of it, so you can concentrate on what the animal is doing. And then, yes, you may take a burst, but I don't necessarily do that a lot. I'm waiting for them to do something interesting, and then I'll take a small burst. Because the bursting capabilities of the cameras nowadays are such that if you sit on it for a second, that's 30 images, and you don't necessarily need 30 images. With hummingbirds, sometimes you do want a burst because you want to catch the wing position in a pleasing location, and sometimes you won't get that unless you're very lucky or you take a burst of 10 shots or something like that. But bursting is something that I mostly do a lot when birds in flight, for instance. That I will burst because then the wing position is always what you're looking for as well. And got to be quick also. Over?
Yes. Thank you very much, Sam. I really appreciate that. I kind of had an idea that that's what you were going to say, but it takes the experience that you have, obviously, to get the good shots, and I'm going to have to work on that. Just one quick question, though, about your deep sky gear. I see you have an astrophotography camera, and especially on a telescope that's set up for it. And you need a lot of patience for that. You need like hours of exposures to get what you have. And I saw that one photo you had of your gear in front of your condo in San Diego, and it's like, how do you leave it set out there for that long? Do you just kind of go out there in the middle of the night and just kind of hang out? Back to you, KJ6GEU.
Great question, and yes, that was especially, this is Whiskey 6, Sierra Juliet Mike. That was especially convenient in those days that I had insomnia because I would sit in my car. I happened to have, at the time of those photographs, would have been my Model 3, which has the wonderful benefit of being able to be on all the time, and you can hook up your computer, and it can charge your computer, so I could sit inside there with the rig next to me because obviously I live in an urban environment, and again, it's one of those things that's more challenging. This is a Bortle 6 sky that I live in North San Diego, and so for those of you that are not into astrophotography, the Bortle scale is about how much light pollution there is. 0 is basically deep space. 1, 2 is like, oh my God, I'm in the Atacama Desert, or in the desert here in Southern California. 9 is Las Vegas. So I would say that San Diego, where I am particularly, is probably about a 6. So I rely a lot on filters to help me kind of get through the noise. But that's the reason I do it, because it tends to be hard to get these kind of images. But to answer your question, I don't want to digress or go off on too much of a tangent. I basically babysit it. And so, but the good thing about using the equipment is that you don't have to do it all in one night. I'll take 2 or 3 hours of images of the same image over one night, and I'll come back in 2 or 3 nights consecutively. And because I'm kind of guiding and telling exactly where I want it to be, I can take all those images and plop them together, if it's 80, 90, 100 images, to put them together to get those final integrations. Over.
Yes, I just want to say thanks again. I appreciate it. And one of these days I think I'm going to invest in gear like that. I'm going to have to talk my wife into being patient enough to let me actually shoot it. It does take a lot of time. But I've always been interested in doing it. Right now I'm happy with the Milky Way images I've gotten, the star trails. I've had a lot of fun with that. But you've given me an inspiration. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for your time and the explanation. I'm not going to take up any more time. There's a lot of other people who want to talk to you, so I'm going to back off. KJ6GEU, back to net control, and thanks again.
Quick comment back to Bob. This is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, hi, Bob. And by the way, the reason I like to do astrophotography, I think it's, besides it being difficult, it's because it's exactly the opposite of the experience that you have with wildlife photography, right? Wildlife photography is stalking, spending a lot of time looking for it, and then having, those precious few seconds when something's happening and being able to take advantage of it. This is the exact opposite. This is almost like landscape photography on steroids, right? As you know, right, you have to spend a lot of time doing this. But hey, if you're ever interested in getting into that other side of it, I'll be more than happy to give you pointers on that too. This is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike. Back to the net control.
Well, we'd love to do a follow-up with astrophotography. There's not a, I'm sure that would go over really big. We've done, we've done that. I'm not sure. Jeez, we've been doing this for 4.5, almost 5 years. And I know we've done a few photography nets. Well, now I have a new purpose for insomnia, become an astrophotographer. You can just stay up all night. But what I like about what you said, and really interesting too, is that you don't have to take it all in one night. You can come back. Anything in the, space and space-time and dimension is all mathematical, right? So, that, things change over from night to night, but not much. And like you said, you've got it all dialed in, so you can go back in and then do different layers. And I know that's how it's done, but it's just, it's not like you're just going out there taking a quick snapshot and going, oh, look, there's the Andromeda Galaxy or Crab Nebula, or one of my favorites is M13 Globular Cluster and Hercules, only because I've seen it on the internet. I don't think I've actually seen it, but I've gone to a few star parties and pretty much just put my telescope back in the car and used everyone else's just to kind of look at it. But what we touched on the other day was about how people that have never looked to the universe, and they see books and pictures of like your own, like yours, and think, oh my gosh, why is it all black and white? I don't see any color at all. And it's like, well, it takes that long-term exposures to get that kind of stuff. W6EJX for the Papa System, great outdoor net. Thank you, Bob. I knew you were going to enjoy that, and I'm sure you did. So thank you so much. I was thinking of you all along. Sorry, Jeff and Bill, but come on in. KO6, is it KO6? Anyway, JCA, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Bob. It is Kilo Oscar 6, Juliet Charlie Alpha. Name is Jeff. Hello, Sam, and welcome to the net. This is a great topic and very interesting. Based on your background, it sounds like you had some biology background, and your experiences are going to these areas over a relatively long period of time. In other words, you're revisiting these jungle areas or diving down in South America. And one of the things that I've heard is a big issue is, or we know is a big issue, is habitat destruction and its impact on wildlife. So I'm wondering, since you've revisited these areas over a period of time, do you have specific examples of habitat destruction, rainforest destruction, things like that, that have impacted both the wildlife that you've observed as well as your photography over time? And hopefully, I'm expecting you probably have seen that. Are you seeing any mitigation efforts by wildlife groups to hopefully mitigate any damage going on? Back to you, Sam.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're touching on a subject that's about as near and dear to mine and my wife's heart. I think, yeah, you definitely see it. You see it all over the place, no matter where you go. My wife and I did our honeymoon off, like we would, of course, do our honeymoon. We were in the Corcovado Reserve that is on the coast of Costa Rica, between Costa Rica and Panama, in one of the wilder places of Costa Rica, and we're, of course, photographing them. We were about, 20 miles offshore in Isla de Caño, which is a island that's out there. And it's basically nowhere that you can imagine it being impacted. Very far away and everything like that. And the reef was bleached. And, again, it was due to situations that were not local, but it's more global, happening in other places, slight rising of temperatures, slight rising of the sea, etc. Those type of things you see a lot. When you go to many different places, you see a lot of secondary forest. But again, that's one of the reasons why we travel the way we do, is because we're looking for primary forest, right? For those of you who don't know the difference, it's a primary forest is basically a forest that has not been cut down at any point by human beings. It's a forest that's intact and it's grown and fallen itself over millennia. But a good portion of a lot of the areas that you see when you're traveling are secondary, meaning that there will be, jungles, there will be cloud forests, but they may have been cut down at some point and then regrown. But I do want to mention something specifically, not only about human impact, but impact on humans. Like I really don't want to bum out everybody on the net, but it really is. It is really tough. I mean, I do come across species that are thought to be extinct, and we are able to be lucky enough to photograph them and then use those photographs for people for their research, or on occasion, we also come across species that had not been classified yet, and so we're lucky enough to be some of the earlier ones to photograph them as well. And, in both cases are extreme. Even in San Diego, right, we have the clapper rail, or the ridgeway rail, as it's called now. There's that lives in the habitats that are the estuaries that live on the edges, and of course that habitat is very much under threat. And so the ridgeway rail, I don't know how many there are left now, but there was something like 700 nesting pairs left in the world at some point. But on this last trip, going down towards the Manu Wildlife Refuge, I mentioned that we were going around uncontacted tribes. Well, just today I saw an article that came out specifically about those uncontacted tribes. The Mashco Piru are a group of indigenous population that live in that area between Peru and Brazil, and these are one of the few tribes that are out there left in South America that are pretty much uncontacted. They do not have a lot of contact with anybody outside of their culture. They're protected by the government as well, so it's illegal to try to make contact with them. And sometimes it's not good for either them or for us if we come across each other, right, for many different reasons. But the article was just talking about how they're being sighted a lot more along the river's edge because of illegal logging, mining, and narco traffic in the areas are pushing them away, and they're being violent, and those people that are doing these activities are being violent against these groups. So I don't know. It is a very difficult subject, but I do have definitely plenty of examples of people doing their work to try to preserve species, to try to preserve cultures, It feels kind of overwhelming sometimes that because of the task at hand. This is Whiskey 6 Sierra Juliet Mike. But no, I've seen plenty of examples of the contrary of people going down there and working with the local communities to kind of change the mindset of going from a hunting for sport and for money and then preserving it to attract more ecotourism, for instance. That seems to be a big sell point. And so by promoting ecotourism, that also means that they purposely have to preserve some of these areas and some of the species as well and study them, etc., to make sure that they can figure out how to improve their habitat or odds, etc. And we come across it a lot because a lot of times when we're staying at different locations, the only places to stay are going to be biological stations. So you come across a lot of researchers that are doing this type of research. There's a lot of stories I could tell you about that, but particularly it hit me kind of hard when I saw the article yesterday, and it's in several different locations. I might put it on my QRZ page, about the Mashku Picchu people that are of the Manu area and their plight. And they're being pushed out of their areas, and of course they're soon to be officially contacted, I'm sure. Back to the net.
Okay, Jeff, do you have any follow-ups with that and any comments? And then we'll move on to our next station.
KO6JCA, thank you very much, Sam. That's very helpful and provides some optimism, the fact that you're able to use your photography talents to hopefully help mitigate some of this and save some of this wildlife. But thank you so much, Sam. Back to net. KO6JCA.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And good to hear you tonight. And I'm glad you came in and had some questions for Sam. And we got one more station that we can go to. I read that article that Sam, he actually sent it to me. And I've always heard about some of these indigenous people in different parts of the world, mostly probably down in Central and South America, that really don't get in contact with too many people from outside, other than their own people, and they don't really have a lot of the immunity that some of us have because we get our flus or colds or COVIDs or whatever you got, and then you kind of build up some immunity. But when there isn't anything down there, it's and plus they've been around for so many years. I just love all that. I can't get enough of everything. All right, enough of my rambling on. This is W6EJX. I guess I should say that. This is the Papa System Great Outdoor Net, and we're talking to Sam tonight, W6SJM, and he's our guest from, he's from San Diego, actually, but he's one of our Papa members that have done some amazing adventures down through the South America and Central America. And I have a feeling we're just going to have to follow him from here on out. All right, let's say hello to Bill. I know Bill's patient. I think he is. And 6UTD, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob, and good evening to everyone on the net, and good evening, Sam. I'm just looking at your photos on your QRZ here. I don't have to tell you that they're beautiful. I especially appreciate my favorite one is the one of the sea here, Mexicali, BC, the Sea of Cortez there. That is awesome. Anyway, I have several questions, but I guess I'll just limit it to two for now. First one's probably, hopefully easy. For my own photography, I used Lightroom for a while, but I got tired of Lightroom, and I switched over to Capture One. So for my first question, I'm just curious which photo editing and organizing software are you using, and then and why? And secondly, I'm just curious if you could, if maybe you never even thought of it, but I'm always interested in people's photographers' journey as to how they develop their style. So I don't know if that's something you'd like to talk about or not, but I'd love to hear about how you developed your style. N6UTV, over to you, Sam.
N6QTD. Yeah, thank you for those questions. Those are great questions. I think, I pretty much use Lightroom. I think I've been using it from very early on, and I think it's mostly I stay in it just because it's the tool that I know, and it seems to. I'm kind of over the fact that I'm a little bit upset at Adobe in general, how they've managed the product and maybe their business practices as well, but. Honestly, I have, we use a NAS that's backed up into the cloud, and right now it holds a total capacity of about 100 terabytes, but it's got about 50 terabytes on there, and I have it hooked up to my computer, my wife's computer, my own by 10 gigabit Ethernet. So what I end up doing is as I get my cards, which in this case was almost it was probably about 500 gigs worth of images that I took this time. I will grab them and immediately transfer them using the catalog, a brand new catalog per trip, down to the NAS, and then I do all my editing directly from the NAS. I don't even transfer it to the computer itself because with the 10 gigabit Ethernet, I get about 1,000 megabytes a second. So it allows me to be able to do that. So that's one. It works. That workflow works really well, and I also use DxO Raw, which is DxO Raw is a great product by DxO. The folks that are do all the reviews on the different sensors, and that is a product that works really well for me to be able to do my raw processing, and then I just do whatever color corrections that I need to do to balance whites. Most of the time, that's all I do is balance whites and compensate the exposure a bit because, like always, you want to start off with as clean and as good of an exposure as you can to then do minimal processing on it because that way you can get the most out of the image, right, starting out with a solid image. But that's the main reason. I mean, I think it's creature of habit. I've been using Lightroom for a long time. I'm sure there's some great tools. I've heard of the one you're talking about. I think it's I've heard a lot of people using it too as well. I might give it a try at some point. It's just all my catalogs are neatly put into Lightroom catalogs for the most part. Now, as far as style, that's an interesting one. That's always an interesting subject for me because my wife and I and my friend Steve, when we're traveling together, we've traveled together, Steve, my wife, and I, and have traveled together on these journeys probably a total of about 7 months now, I mean, between one trip or another. And, he's photographing literally most of the time the same subject that I'm photographing and the same subject my wife's photographing. And inevitably, the three images that we get of the same subject are going to be really good, but very different. And of course, he uses different optics and a different platform than I use. I'm a Canon shooter, not because I think Canon is better, but because that's where I invested all my glass, right? All the money on the glass originally. So it's kind of hard to move over. I like the ergonomics. I'm used to it. He's a Nikon shooter. The best thing about this whole thing is we never borrow each other's lenses, so that works out really nicely. But as far as the style, oh man, I really can't tell you. I think more than anything, it's the anticipation of what I'm looking for. I know the particular species. I know the specific behavior that I think might be interesting, or a particular pose, or those type of things. And I do know some basic things that I always keep. I like a very clean, uncluttered image. I don't like clutter, and so that's why my backgrounds look the way they do, and they're very simple because I want the person to be attracted to the subject. And no matter what, my style is that the eye's got to be sharp. And if the eye is sharp, then it doesn't matter if your depth of field is shallow and the rest of the bird or animal is out of focus, because as long as that eye is sharp, then people will never notice the rest, right? Or in fact, it might even be pleasing, or of course could be on purpose. I don't know. That's a tough question. I'm not sure if I answered it, but it's me. It's like when you play guitar or anything else, right? It's like it comes naturally. Your style, the way you play, the way you take, and even the way you edit afterwards, right? It's what you find pleasing in an edit afterwards is different from person to person. I couldn't tell you exactly, honestly. Back to you, Net Control.
Yeah, great question, Bill. I didn't even think about the post end of what you do after you get all the pictures and what do you use. So, yeah, perfect. Did you have any follow-up questions? And then we're going to probably open it up when we have time. Hopefully Sam has time. But do you have a follow-up from Bill in 6UTD? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bob. And that was a great explanation, Sam. I appreciated that. So, yeah, I do the same thing. I download directly to my NAS, and I've upgraded my Wi-Fi. In fact, that was the topic of one of my TechNets once was the radio science behind the Wi-Fi upgrade. And so I can edit directly from my notebook too. But yeah, I agree with you. Directly to the NAS. And then edit there. But you talked about the eye, and you also talked about you like uncluttered backgrounds, and I tend to, depending on what I'm going for, I like to go for that too. Especially the eye. But so I'm looking at the images, the bird and flight images on your QRZ, and the one thing, I think everyone knows that bird and flight pictures are difficult. If you don't, they're difficult. And I noticed that I like your depth of field that you've chosen. Like, for example, the eagle. The depth of field covers the entire bird from one wing to the other. So, like, part of the wing's not out of focus, but then you were still able to bokeh out the background there and get in most of your photos there. So, how do you pick that depth of field? Did you pick it in advance? I guess you pick it in advance. I guess it's just you shoot so many, you kind of know. Oh, I need to be for this focal length and this distance I am away. I mean, how much do you use a mathematical calculator to help you with that, or do you just get an idea of, oh yeah, I'm 100 feet away from the bird. I'm shooting at 200 millimeters, and I'm going to be at, 5.6 is going to give me my perfect 4-foot wide depth of field. How are you coming up with that? N6UTD.
Great question. Those are, that's, again, muscle memory and knowing your equipment, because you really have to make those choices. In some cases, you're making these choices even before the subject is there. When you know that perhaps a subject is going to be there, that's the best, because you see them flying around and you see maybe a carcass of something there, and so you see that one of the griffon vulture landing, and that's up in the Pyrenees, and it was snowing a little bit, and luckily it wasn't snowing very much, so it didn't confuse the autofocus system. That's the only thing I do use quite a bit, is the autofocus, right? But everything else is manual. As far as the depth of field, I'm shooting a lot of times with a 500 f4, maybe with a doubler on it, like a 1.4. I don't tend to shoot with a 2x doubler because I don't like the degradation of the image quality. At the most, I'll use is a 1.4, 1.5, something like that. But with that, at an f4, when you're very close up at close focus, like with the hummingbirds, that is pretty much as close focus as it gets, about 10 feet away with that lens. Maybe I'll put a stacking tube on it so I can get down to 6 feet or something like that. But you're dealing with very limited depth of field at that point. You might have the eye in focus and the back of the head may be out of focus in a tiny bird, right? However, you have a griffon vulture, which is a solid 100 feet away from you, and so that that, I can get away with f8 to get the entire bird in flight and get them edge to edge in focus. There, my choice is not as difficult because he's pretty far away, so f8, and maybe if it's a little foggy or something, I'll bring it up to f10. That helps to cut through the fog. But then there, I'm making more of a choice of shutter speed. Like in the picture of the torrent duck that I took this last time, that's the flowing water, I knew, one of the things I was going to follow up with you from the last thing that I answered, a lot of these species are animals and birds that I've photographed before. And so I don't feel the pressure to necessarily get a shot of those animals. I feel a lot more free to experiment. so doing a 1/10 of a second shutter speed on the tripod for that duck, and hoping that of the 4 shots that I took, the duck was actually still, and so I can get that flowing water. That's part of it too. Taking the risk of experimenting a little bit at the time, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it does work, you get a great result. But, then again, I've had the luck of photographing these species before, so like I said, the pressure's off. But, a lot of it is muscle memory, but a lot of the times I'm looking at the light conditions, looking what's going on before I even have the subject, and kind of preset some settings so that when the subject's there and I need to do compensations, they're minor, hopefully. Hopefully minor. But you know how it is. Back to the net.
Wow, that's so awesome. It's, the picture of that, I guess we'll call it a sitting duck in the water, and you'd taken that, 9 years previous to that, and then took the same picture again. It's, with the water just turning into that mystical thing that water does when you take a really slow exposure. But, that would make sense that your subject needs to be perfectly still, of course. Otherwise, you never know. So you never know what you're going to get. I mean, okay, so let me brag. No, I'm not going to brag. Let me just tell you so before I bought this wonderful Nikon camera from RJ, KM6AVH, I never owned a really good digital SLR. Nothing fancy. Does have mirrors. Got all the other bells and whistles. But for me, it's wonderful. But prior to that, one time up at our camping trip up to Lake Casitas, when the bald eagles were nesting, I was able to get a pretty darn good picture. Now, you hold on. Are you sitting down? With a Celestron Skyview binoculars. This is for stargazing. Well, you can do terrestrial too with it, so they're actually pretty cool. And my iPhone, which is a 14 Pro, so it's got that extra lenses or whatever on it. So I guess the bottom line is you can tell that it is a bald eagle. I was just so happy. But that's what I was trying to say. My point I'm trying to make is that you can go online and find all kinds of great pictures of all kinds of wildlife and whatever you want. But it's not your picture. When it's your picture, it's a whole different ballgame. W6CJX for the Papa System Great Outdoor Net, and we're talking to Sam, W6SJM, who is an outdoor photographer, to say the least. So I think what I'll do, Sam, right now, since we got about another 10 minutes before we probably should close the net, let's take a few check-ins, people that may have some questions, may not. Just want to say hello to Sam. We'll give Sam a little break. Hopefully he has a bottle of water or something next to him. And I'm so appreciative of him coming in and just making this a wonderful, wonderful net for the great outdoors and the Papa System for sure. So let's just take some regular check-ins. If you want to just say hi or have any outdoor things that happened this weekend, let us know about it. And if you have a question for Sam, that's always open too. W6CJX, net control.
KI6BL.
KM6AVH.
November 6, Hotel Alpha Lima.
Whiskey 8 Kilo November X-ray.
Okay, that's a good little start there. We got Tom, KI6BL, KN6AVH, RJ, N6HAL. What the hell? Hey, Hal. I'm going to call you Chief. W8KNX, Rory. Our good friend back in the Detroit area. Let's say hello to Tom, KI6BL. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you much. And Sam, there's one person who has gone on some trips like you're talking about. I was a photographer for my first life on Earth here. But these trips are not cheap. Do you offer up your pictures to Getty or any of the other agencies?
Yeah, thank you for that question. No, many years ago, I used to compete and sell my photography. I kind of gave that up. Most of the time, my photography is used, like I was mentioning before, I will donate some of the photographs specifically for conservation and such like that. I'm blessed enough to be able to have the means now to fund some of these trips that I do, and because you're right, it's not the most inexpensive way to travel. It requires a lot of logistics, and on this particular trip on the river, you have to have the boat, the captain, the cook, and help on there plus us, right? And so it does tend to be somewhat pricey, but But no, I've been blessed to where I can self-fund those things right now. And but those are my goals throughout my year, right? Is through the years to get enough to be able to do this. And honestly, I do it because it's a passion now. I don't do it for any other reason. I don't offer it up. The few occasions when I do photography, when somebody asks me to do it for them for whatever reason, I usually do it for free because I want to have full creative abilities of doing what I want to do and how I do it, how I'm able to do it, and not feel the pressure of being consigned to do something specifically. So yeah, I'm kind of arrogant that way, I suppose. But no, I sure don't. I don't sell any of my images. I've done several galleries and things of that nature, but as conservation-wise, back in my hometown of Mexicali, I've done a few exhibitions, specifically to promote the local wildlife and conservation of the local wildlife. But that's it. No, not commercial at all. Over.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What a great feeling to be able to give back. And do you have anything else, Tom? My good friend Tom. And he did a lot of wildlife photography too, and of course also for his business there. Go ahead, Tom, if you have anything else, and give it back to me, or give it to Sam if you have a question.
No questions here. I know about the selling or not selling. I've got walls covered with pictures. We've been to the top and the bottom of the continent, and I haven't sold any of them, which is just fine with me. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate what you do and how you do it, and wish I was still doing it. KI6PL.
Thank you, Tom. I guess we could live vicariously through the lens of Sam and his lovely wife, and keep doing what you're doing as long as you can. I know we had the conversation. We don't. He could touch on it later if he wants. About does the whole family go, or do you just go, you and your wife? And he had a kind of a funny answer to that. And I guess one of my questions, we can just kind of throw it in the back pocket about vaccinations and those kind of things before you go. I guess probably a no-brainer, but I just thought of that actually. Let's go to RJ, KM6 AVH, photographer in his own right. He's probably one of our well-known photographers. Let's talk professional photographer and cameraman for many, many years, and he's got some great photography himself. So, RJ, welcome.
Yeah, KM6AVH. Oh, I have another radio on. Hold on a second. Somebody asked about style. I don't want to take the stage here away from Sam, but I do have a comment on it. What happens is I started back in the film world, where in the 35 millimeter world, you had 36 shots, and all 36 shots had to be correct. There's no taking 20 pictures of the same thing and hoping to get one or two of them out. So my philosophy is we kind of went from photography to digital imaging. And digital imaging is a whole different mindset, because you can go into this situation and just shoot the hell out of it, and just, if you get a couple of winners out of 20 shots, then you're really happy, But, developing your own style and what you enjoy shooting is total experimentation. I've tried different topics, and I've been totally bored with different topics. Like, for example, I'm not an urban shooter. So living in an urban environment, over time it has become more and more difficult for me to find topics that I enjoy shooting. Today I was at the Workman Museum in the City of Industry, which is a very interesting place, only to find out I was there in 2013 and had shot it then. And so my concentration, and then I'll let it go, my concentration is abandoned buildings, mining towns, ghost towns, dilapidated farms. I love photographing barns that are collapsing in on themselves, and I go into some of these places. I shot along I-40 in some of the abandoned hotels and gas stations, and my mind just went wild as I looked at this deteriorating building that's just falling apart and graffitied, and some of it might have even been burned out. And I just had this envision of what it was like back in the day when Route 66 was there before I-40, and all of the things that went on in these hotels, from truck drivers to, well, we can guess some of the other things that might have happened in a hotel room. And then the restaurants, the great things, the great food, the great camaraderie, and all of that. And I just look at these buildings, and there's actually a movie in my head of what it was like, how the people dressed, and the cars that they drove, and their attitude in life. And so I like nostalgia. I like looking at a lot of those old things. And I've shot drag racing, which I love, but now the drag strips are closed. Air shows, boat races, motorsports. So a lot of those things I really enjoy. Anyway, I'll give it back over. I don't want to take over this thing. KM6 AVH, back to net control.
Well, you never take over any net, but you're always welcome to. And I can actually say that my parents, on their honeymoon, stayed at the Wigwam Motel. No, they were married. So anyway, it was the Wigwam there on Route 66. There's some pictures in one of our 2,432 photo albums that we have somewhere here in the house. And then, of course, my dad was a professional photographer for, I guess 35 years before I was even born. Do the math on that one. And I do have the bragging rights and pleasure to say that he did photograph the Palm Springs aerial tramway when it was being constructed. He was contracted out through Kaiser Steel there. So I just got to find, there's another album that has some really cool photos. I found one, and I even watched the YouTube video once of that. I know I'm going off here, but it's still photographic related and outdoors. And I swear there is a picture from the backside that looks exactly like my dad, and the guy does have a camera, so kind of wondering if that was him or not, that somebody took some old, 16 millimeter, not video. Yeah, video. Well, whatever you want to call it. Film. Okay, I'll get off of my high horse, and let's say hello to Hal. N6HAL. Good evening, Hal. Welcome.
N6HAL. Hello there, Bob. Thanks for holding the net. And hello, Sam. Very interested in your adventures and your stories here tonight. Extent of my camera experience is the old Kodak 110 and Minolta 35 millimeter taking family pictures. So I did overhear Sam's first conversation with Cecil when Sam was over there in the Amazon, and I listened to that very interested. And I was glad to hear Cecil talk to Sam about coming and presenting a program to the Papa people. And I'm glad that, Bob, you had your input into that and getting this to happen tonight. So very interesting. I kept my ear glued to the speaker the entire time, and I want to thank the both of you. And I'm sorry that I missed meeting Sam at the San Diego meeting. I was there also that day. But hopefully in the future we'll get to meet. Back to the net. Thank you, Bob. N6 HAL, back to the net.
Well, thank you, Hal. And yeah, we're going to turn Sam into a celebrity yet, whether he wants to be or not. I really hope that he can, well, I don't think he has a problem putting together a presentation. And, of course, he could probably put something on his laptop or with all of his pictures. Since everyone's a few people have gone to his QRZ page, they're already going to know what his last name is. And I did ask Sam, I think ahead of time, people could go to his Facebook page. I believe it's open to at least look at his pictures, because you're not going to get the full benefit of what he's capable of doing and what he and his wife are capable. I want to give her equal credit, and they do this together. And like he said, he's so blessed to be able to have her to go with him and enjoy the same passion that he has of the photography. So I said we need to get her into ham radio too. But I think that might just come. It's not that hard to do. All right. Well, thank you, Hal. And let's say hello to Rory. He's back in, I think, Detroit. So let's see what Rory's doing tonight. And welcome to the great outdoors. W6CJX is net control.
Yeah, W6CJX and then at W8KNX. Good evening, Bob and Sam. It's certainly a pleasure. I don't get to stay up late, except on holiday weekends where I don't have to go in the office on Monday. Otherwise, I have been enjoying the listening to this outdoor net recorded after the fact. Usually Monday or Tuesday I get around to that, so that's much appreciated. But what a great conversation. Was well worth being able to stay up and listen in tonight. Don't have any specific questions, but I certainly wouldn't mind seeing a bit more of the photos than what's on the QRZ page at some point. So that's all I know, and good to hear you tonight, Bob, and thanks for the great conversation, Sam. 7-3, W8KNX.
Thank you, Rory. You've always been such a loyal person on our nets and E-Star in different times, and yeah, I know you've got some, or have had some pretty wild hours and things that you can't always listen, and that's, I don't toot my horn too many times, and of course the archive that we do on YouTube for the Papa system serves a really good purpose, not only for myself to go back and just listen to it, but I know if I have trouble sleeping, I'll put one of those on and just it's actually pretty interesting, but it's nice that it's there. There's several people that can't make the net, or they might have made the net but just wanted to hear it one more time. I go back to some of the old ones, and they're a lot of fun. And then we can also have non-hams that can come in and see what we do here on the Papa system. So thank you, Rory, and have a great week ahead. We start our week here, like I always say, on Sunday nights. This is our Monday, so that way Monday's not really Monday, it's the day after. It's Sunday, something like that. Let me throw it back to Sam. Let me think. I had a thought process that just went out the window. And maybe we touch on your Facebook page. I mean, because these pictures have to be seen by people. So is that something we can do? Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Just touching back real quick, to the first caller, and my apologies that I don't remember his call sign, but he was referring to taking photographs of the decaying buildings and such. I mean, honestly, I was picturing the story already when you were talking about that. I go back to the 35 millimeter days too, and in fact, my first attempt at photographing wildlife was using slide film. In fact, I was using Velvia that's rated at 50, but I would shoot at 30. So needless to say, of 36 shots that you get, maybe I get 4 or 5 of them in there because of the 5 stops of dynamic range. So I feel you when you talk about 35 millimeter for sure. And honestly, it is about storytelling, right? And then it depends on the story. It depends on, it really depends on the subject that interests you, and then that's the one that you can typically tell a story about it, but you told that story very, very well. That's what I was going to make a comment on. But I think, I've enjoyed this net quite a bit. I appreciate the invitation, and it's really good to be part of the PAPA system, and I really enjoyed just touching the very, very beginnings of this vast hobby that or obsession that I might be getting into. Back to net control.
See? I told you you were well-spoken. You did a great job tonight. Thank you so much, Sam. I was just, as they say, over the moon. Maybe no pun intended, but it's just been quite an honor. And as we say in ham radio, or amateur radio, we probably would have never met, maybe, without bringing us together here on the PAPA system and amateur radio. And now that you're combining the two with your passion of outdoor photography, it's just over the moon. There you go. We're getting on a little bit here. Let's take one or two more check-ins if you want to, and if not, we'll wrap it up. And we want to thank Sam so much for coming in tonight and taking his Sunday night to be with us. And we enjoyed every single bit of it. I think it was wonderful. I'll have this, well, it wasn't a whole, so far, knock on wood, a lot to clean up tonight, but I'll take out some little things and have it posted by tomorrow afternoon. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to it on YouTube, you can go to the PAPA system, go to the homepage, drop that down to YouTube, and then there's the PAPA system YouTube, and you'll see that there. So anyone else have any last questions for Sam? And then we'll cut Sam loose and thank him profusely over and over and over for being here tonight and being our special guest. It really made it a wonderful night. So anyone else that didn't get a chance to either say thank you to Sam and or maybe a quick question.
K6OLY Kilo 6 Whiskey Kilo Whiskey Warren Papa 30
KO6 DXN Papa 24
KO6 DKX Papa 3.
Okay, I'm going to cut it off there so we don't head into the midnight hour, but I'm glad you guys were able to come in, and I know Evo's quite the photographer too. Let's say hello to Mike, K6OL. Why, good evening.
Good evening, Bob in the net, K6OLY. I wanted to ask Sam, listening to his description of what he's done and his methods and the way he talks, I'm wondering if he has or would consider giving a seminar at B&H's event center. I'm sure he knows what that is. Back to net.
Go ahead, Sam.
I'm familiar with B&H since they've taken a lot of my money before, if it's the same B&H that we're talking about. But no, I'm not familiar with that. I think I've seen a lot of the, obviously I've seen a lot of the photographers that they are sponsored by Canon and Nikon, and my friend is, that I travel with is sponsored by Nikon. I'm not, since I'm not commercial, not really sponsored, but I'd always entertain any opportunity to share my passion for photography for sure. Back to net.
Okay, well we got you first, so we'll have to make B&H wait. Anyway, hopefully we can when you have time. Before you take off for the wild yonder, we need to have you do at least a couple presentations. That would be wonderful. I know San Diego is the no-brainer, but it's the other ones that we may have to travel a little bit too, but we'd sure love. Thank you, Mike, and let's go to Warren, K6WKW. Welcome, Warren.
Good evening, Bob, Sam, and the net. Just for fun, I'm going to mention some stuff that goes way back. My original photography was with my mother's Brownie using VP-116 film until somewhere in my pre-teens, I guess, I got a little President camera that shot VP-127. I don't know if you guys even know what that is, but that's old stuff. And then, of course, my first Polaroid and my only Polaroid was the Swinger, which was also poor. You know, even if you did the fixer, the pictures all wanted to curl. Anyway, but my good equipment is where I want to start. Just to introduce myself to you, was a 35 millimeter SLR, and yes, shooting a 36 frame roll. If I got 2 or 3 that I really liked, I thought I was very successful. And I shot a lot of Plus X and Tri-X, and a little bit of color, but I was doing my own processing, so the color had to be paid for, and that was done less often. So in my day, shooting the 35 SLR, if I'm trying to get a live shot, I've got to hit it exactly right, because that's just going to be click, and that's the only shot I'm going to get. Sam, I'm curious whether you're shooting something that maybe takes 5 sequential shots, and so that, you know, you got a better chance of getting it. With live stuff moving is, for me, you know, pretty impossible. So just kind of curious if you're using that multi-shot thing, or if you're actually just right on it where you've got it focused and you can get that eye perfect. So that was my question to Sam. Bob, I'll give it to you to coordinate things. K6WKW, thank you both, and everybody.
Thank you, Warren. Yeah, probably my favorite camera was the Kodak 110 with a little cube on top. I'll leave it at that. Over to you, Sam.
Just a real quick comment. Yeah, I started my my photo experience in black and white and doing. I still shoot black and white film, and I shoot with a couple of cameras that I have, including a Contax G2 and a Leica M6, and I'll develop at home and then scan it in and do that. I really, really still enjoy the stench of a fixer. I love that. Now, the other question, yes. No, I do. The cameras that I shoot have the opportunity to take up to about 30 frames per second, but when they're 45 megapixels and above, that's just basically creating a pile of storage, and it doesn't make sense to me. I think the only reason I ever take a burst shot is if I'm unsure about the position of a wing or something that you cannot see very well with your naked eye. Like a hummingbird wing, when they're flapping, you cannot see their wings. So you'll have to take a burst of, 5-10 shots in less than a second, and then to see if you get a pleasing position that you're looking for, or your mind's eye saw in the image anyway. But otherwise, no. A lot of the times I'm taking a single shot, 2 shots, something like that, and because if I can't anticipate what is going to happen, just like with people photography, then I'm probably not going to get the shot. Back to net control.
I will have to say you got the shot several times on those hummingbirds. I know you said those are one of your favorite subjects to film, and to be able to stop a hummingbird wing, oh boy, that's a good one. So hats off, or lens cap off. What are we saying anyway? And I was just going to mention, too, when I took photography in junior college, I guess we'll call it, I learned, because everything was in black and white, and we did develop our own film, but I learned that our instructor said there's a lot of color in black and white. But it's still, you can, and I used to love the old barns. We used to take field trips from the college, and we'd all go out and meet at some old barn that's falling down and just take black and white photos. Just came out stunning. Good. All right. And let's say hello to KO6. I believe it's Delta X-Ray November. And let's go with that. And if not, you know who you are. Come on in and say hello.
Yeah, hello there, Net Control. This is KO6 Delta X-Ray November. You got that right. This is Cam in Temecula, Papa 24. Just wanted to check in, say hello to everybody, and just thank Sam for being here. Just been kind of listening in on to the net in the background here. It's been a really great conversation, and thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Back to Net Control.
Yes, and the flowers keep on coming. Thank you so much, Cam. I had a feeling it was you. We haven't talked in a little while, and I didn't want to. I've given up on guessing people's names, so I figure I'll let you fill that part in. But yeah, thank you, Cam. And you've got quite a entertainment life yourself, so kudos to you. Let's wrap it up with Evo. I think we're going to do that. I know Sam's been here with us, and just amazing. Absolutely couldn't ask for a better net tonight, and we've had some good ones, I have to admit. The outdoor net, and of course all the nets we do. And just can speak just for this one mostly, that we've had some wonderful guests that come on and share their life with us in the great outdoors. So let's go to KO6BKX, my friend, fellow, whatever we do. What do we do anyway?
Well, I think you handed it over to me, Bob. Good evening. And Sam and Bob, thank you very much. This was a very awesome net. I really appreciated it. Bob, I don't know where you got the photographer in me. I really have no knowledge as far as that goes. I do have a camera, and I'm very grateful for my SD card. I remember one time I made a trip to Sumatra, an island belonging to Indonesia, and we had like 40 film rolls, 35 millimeters, with 36 slides each, and we ended up with about 450 that we could use, and the rest was all garbage. But yeah. Anyways. Really appreciate the net tonight, and Sam, the pictures that I saw on your QRZ page, it's amazing. I'm very, very envious of your trip, and I hope to get you over to the Orange County luncheon one day and hear more about you. And yeah, with that, I'll give it back to you, Bob. KO6BKX, back to Net Control.
Well, Evo, you have a camera. You're a photographer. That's the first stage. People who don't have a camera can't say they're a photographer. Whether you're a really good photographer or you do wonderful things, that's another story. No, you took pictures out on the island last year. Yeah, last year. Time goes by so fast. But yeah, if you're a presenter at one of the luncheons, I believe your lunch is free. So if you go to the Sizzler in Orange County, make sure you order the steak and lobster. All right, with that, I am going to send it to Sam for any final parting words. Thank you so much. I mean, I've said it so many times and can never say enough, but, you know, like I said, this whole thing started with a QSO from the deep parts of the Amazonian jungles, and it was just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I promised not to use this analogy, but I jumped on it like flies on beep, or I have a beep somewhere, but anyway, I did, just because Sam just sounded so good, and just, oh my gosh, Outdoor Net, yes, we got to get you on there. Over to you, Sam, for a final, and final on approach. A landing here, and we'll call it a night. So I thank you for everyone for checking in tonight. So go ahead, Sam, with any parting thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment about what Evo said about having, you know, I think back in the day we used to call those bricks, right? It would have, I think it was 20 rolls. I think it was, 20 rolls per brick. You take 2 bricks with you. And the reality is that I know that I think National Geographic photographers would travel with bricks of rolls of slide film. And again, I think they're maybe they had higher keeper rates, but surprisingly not as high as one would think, especially because sometimes there were difficult shots, and they would have to have a little luck on their side too. But yeah, that's interesting. I love shooting with slide back in the day too, so I totally understand that. But no, thank you very much to the net. It was my pleasure to be on. It was a great first experience for me to be on net on Papa, and I really appreciate you, Bob. I thank you for the invite, and thank you all for the great questions and the great camaraderie. I really appreciated it, and I hope to meet you all in person at some point. So with that, I'll hand it over to Net Control, and to all of you 73s, and good night to the rest of you.
And there you are, folks. We did it. We had our adventurer come in and do his great presentation. I mean, I can't take all the credit. I won't. Sam and I have been working, like I said, for a little while, and I think you kind of need to with something like this, and to make it really work well for the net. And the fact that we're using amateur radio is really a plus. I mean, people do this all the time in the commercial world, and they got producers, and they've got editors, and they've got all these people standing around doing things. Oh, my frog stopped. There we go. We'll bring them back. And I'm supposed to be on repeat. Okay, well, thank you so much, like I said to Sam. Thank you to all the stations that did check in and all those stations that didn't. I mean, I know there had to be a few out there that just were listening and enjoying it. And like I said, by sometime tomorrow afternoon, we'll have it up on the YouTube site. And if you missed the first half or something like that, you want to come in and take a listen. We'd sure love to hear from you, too, on that. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to the Papa system for letting us have this wonderful net and all the nets that we have 7 days a week here on the Papa system. Also, thank you to Cecil for his legendary leadership, and for all the tower climbers out there who might still be listening. Thank you, Darren, and Chris, and all the other guys that go to the mountaintops and better reactivate the crickets. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time in the great outdoors. W6CJX will be clear, returning the frequency back to normal and retrieve. One more cat. There we go. All right. Good night, kitty kitty.
Wow.